Hello, Night Owls. Today I'll be reading from Wole Talabi's short story collection, Convergence Problems. And we'll see if we get to a few stories. They're medium, short to medium. We'll keep it under an hour. We'll start with the story, An Arc of Electric Skin. For a long time, I wondered what kind of person would volunteer to have their skin exposed to temperatures cycling between the melting point of aluminum and the nighttime surface temperature of mercury, riding a wave of thermal torment that would drive most people insane with pain. Now I know. I fell in love with such a man. He was ungraciously tied to an anti-ionization pole and executed by a six-man firing squad in front of the dirty gray wall of Kirikiri prison before a hushed crowd of witnesses. I never even got the chance to say a proper goodbye. I was in the vice grip of three burly Secret Service officers, tears still streaming down my face even though I've been crying for days. His afro was wild and uneven, the white jumpsuit he'd been dressed in was frayed but clean, and his eyes were still as defiant as they'd been the day he'd walked into my office at Lagos University Teaching Hospital and said with calm and composure that belied all the rage that must have been inside him, "Dr. Ogunbiyi, I read the paper you published with Professor Aliu. I want to volunteer." His real name was Akahi Nwosu, but the media called him Shock Absorber because he used to be a roadside mechanic before he met me and taught himself to wield lightning. My people believe names are tied to one's essence and can influence or predict one's destiny, a bond to one's Ori. I think Akahi's people have similar beliefs because he told me his name means Hand of God. It was appropriate. What else would you call a man whose destiny drove him to find a way to hold on to the raging flow of displaced electrons and bend them to his will? My heart aches because I miss his determined eyes, his hard hands, his smooth skin, his soft voice, but also because in fragile moments doubts overwhelm me, and I'm not sure if I ever knew him completely enough to have truly loved him. In the darkest of those moments, when I think about his final deception, I'm not sure if he ever truly loved me. He graduated from the University of Ibadan with a degree in electrical engineering, during which he had attended guest lectures by my senior research partner, Professor Aliu. He graduated with a first-class degree and a fascination with electrical systems, despite having to work part-time as an assistant at a mechanic shop where he also lived because he couldn't afford accommodation. But he couldn't find a job in the crumbling post-oil economy, and so he took what little savings he had and started a small mechanic shop of his own next to Oyota Motor Park. He showed me pictures of it while we lay in each other's arms 2 nights before the procedure. It was little more than a zinc roof over dusty land and a pile of second-hand tools. The profits weren't good, but he worked hard. His calloused hands bore witness. He spent hours attending to junk jalopies that were barely roadworthy, but heaven knows he did his best with them. His own mother had died in a bus just like the ones he frequently serviced, in an accident on the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, which everyone knew was caused by a contractor cutting corners on what should have been road barriers. An accident he'd barely survived himself, needing 5 months in the hospital to recover and walk again. His father had sold everything he owned and borrowed from family members just to afford the care his son needed. So, when he worked on those buses and cars, he told me he saw the faces of the families that would get into them, hoping to make it to their destinations, and so he worked as hard as he could to make sure that they did. He endured every brick the crumbling system threw at him. Constant police harassment, raids for bribes, aggressive, underpaying clients, thieving, and untrustworthy assistants. Random changes in government policy that almost always meant he had to pay more for something. all of this under the blistering heat of the Lagos sun, increasing his already high melanin levels. His darkening became another physical marker of his endurance. And still, he persisted, my Akahi. He had a strong mind. This country happens to all of us, he told me the first night I had asked about his scars. That was his philosophy. Some of us more than others. He eventually saved enough money to move out of the face me, I face you he shared with friends from university and into a self-contained, in an almost respectable part of town. He was working his way up the broken system, keeping up with the Nigerian Journal of Electrical and Electronic Applications, and still looking for a job where he could apply the knowledge that had always fascinated him. Then he went to the campaign rally. Ezekwe for president. #as easy. A new Nigeria. We all remember the slogans, the digitags, the posters. Ngozi Ezekwe announced her candidacy quietly at a small event near her hometown in Awka, but within a few months, she had become the leading opposition contender. She was a technocrat with a plan, unlike the political vultures circling the federal carcass we'd become used to. She came in with a clear agenda, an empathetic ear, and grassroots support from businesses she'd helped survive the economic collapse. We all remember the hope, and we all saw what happened. Quo Vision display decks crackled with high-resolution holo streams of soldiers beating unarmed people in the streets, dragging them into the backs of armored trucks, firing live rounds into defiant crowds, breaking up the opposition rallies and protests. Akahi was one of those taken into custody near the infamous Oyota protest site where almost 40 were killed. He was beaten and tortured for weeks. The Gusau administration made no secret of what they did, even though the president denied it on international broadcasts. But on the ground, we all knew what it was. We'd seen it before. Their regular trademark. It was a show of force to intimidate the opposition and its supporters. We were living in a hostage state. It was during his weeks of torment that something broke in Akahi. To be treated that way by those who were meant to protect and serve you, to know that they could kill you and face no consequences, that nothing would happen, it does something to your mind. Pain can clarify things. He told me later that after hours of unrelenting terror and agony, he'd stopped fearing death. He'd realized then that he'd been so focused on surviving the system that he hadn't ever truly been alive, that he was doing nothing but dying slowly and had been doing so for a long time. He told me that it was only after he was suddenly released, thrown out of a pickup truck near Ozumba Mdaive Street at midnight, that he resolved to ensure things changed. I wish I had known then exactly what he meant. I'm not recruiting test subjects yet, I told him that day in my office after he'd explained who he was and what he was talking about. We still have a few iterations to ensure we can manage sensory response. You mean pain? Yes, I told him. Right now, we can only ensure subject survival and prevent long-term tissue damage, but we are still working to limit the impact of extreme temperature microexposures on pain receptors. The body and the mind will protest even under anesthesia. I can handle pain, he said calmly. I just come back from a session with the visiting council at the African Academy of Sciences to make my 7th application for additional funding after a week of sleepless nights, running calculations, preparing proposals. The potential of our research was enormous. Even the most conservative members of the council weren't myopic enough to miss the value in being able to use enhanced conductivity in human skin to develop a new category of biomedical devices that could be naturally embedded in the body and controlled using dermal interface circuitry. They just wanted to see more progress before they committed to helping us. Professor Aliyu had already designed and tested a prototype device using enhanced conductivity and discarded epithelial extracts, but we needed to show that we could make this work in living people. I felt like I was the one holding things back. I was under pressure to make progress. I should have been more skeptical. I should have asked more questions. I should have told Akahi to wait until we were ready, but instead I asked him to fill out a form. It took a few weeks for me to convince Professor Aliu to cross what he believed to be a moral line and for us to perform all the preliminary tests and screening processes. Akahi and I spent much of that time together. Him sitting just outside my office, quietly watching me or reading, patiently waiting for another blood or skin or hair sample collection, or for another baseline skin conductivity measurement. I never asked him why he stayed at the hospital between tests when he didn't have to. But I did ask him to join me for dinner once, as I was closing for the day. He seemed so focused sitting there reading an old battered electrical engineering book. But I don't think I will ever forget the soft smile that broke across his face when he looked up and the way he said, "Yes, doctor, but please, let me take you to the best buka in Surulere. I hope you're hungry." "I am," I said. I hadn't eaten all day. We went to eat amala and gebegiri at a makeshift shop down the road. An old lady in a black blouse and Ankara wrapper scooped up the soft lumps of yam flour, loaded them with generous helpings of soup and meat, and we took seats on plastic chairs behind her. We spoke as we ate. That was the first time we talked about anything other than the experiments, but the conversation flowed naturally, easily. We spoke for hours until the old woman told us she was closing for the day. It wasn't planned, but we went back to my place and kept talking. He showed me some of his scars, and I told him about my work, and we kept speaking until we fell asleep together, face to face on my bed with all our clothes still on. When we woke up in the morning, we laughed, and then we kissed, leaving me lightheaded like I was still asleep and in a dream. It was only later that a feeling of wrongness settled upon me. He was, in some sense, my patient. But nothing that happened that day was planned. And sometimes you get caught in a river, and you can't do anything but flow. Love can be a strange and sudden thing. 3 days after he'd passed the final screening, I led him into the bioannealing cell I designed with Professor Aliu. He squeezed my hand as he stepped into the black ovoid pod with wires and tubes running out of it like so many umbilical cords. He smiled at me before securing the fiberglass mask over his face. Professor Aliu was nested comfortably in his wheelchair, monitoring the thermal induction and vacuum pump systems that would rearrange the molecular structure of the melanin in Akahi's skin. Part of me wanted to pull him away to wait until we had improved the bioannealing procedure to the point where we could do it with less pain, or perhaps to reduce the target conductivity increase from the theoretical limit to a near threshold value, even though I knew that would only reduce the pain by a small fraction and increase the risk of process failure. For sure, if I'd known then what he was planning to do, what he had resolved to do all along, I would have dragged him out of there. But I didn't. So I stepped back and gave Professor Aliu the signal to begin. He screamed, but we could not hear him. He screamed for the 3 hours it took to increase his skin conductivity 50 orders of magnitude. We couldn't even pause the process to give him some reprieve, not without risking a reversal. I stepped out of the room to cry. I still wonder how he managed to endure it. I still wonder how I could put someone I loved through that. I suppose I will always wonder when it comes to Akahi. It was only a month later that I truly understood why he did it. I saw it all in high-resolution holostream, same as everyone else. Incumbent President Umar Gusau was standing in the back of an electric black Mercedes T-Class pickup truck, flanked by Secret Service men in dark suits and military attachés in camouflage, as he waved to a crowd of paid supporters. Although he was supposed to be resting at home and preparing for his conductivity ability test that day, I saw Akahi on the Convergence screen. He was an almost invisible speck in the sea of people. Almost invisible, that is, until he pulled up an umbrella fitted with what I later came to find out was a high-power laser and fired it silently into the sky, where it formed an ionized column of air, an artificial conduit for electrical discharge. When lightning finally tore down from the sky in a hot, bright streak, he reached up and seized it like a whip made of bright electric death. I gasped audibly and didn't even notice that I was spilling my cup of hot Lipton tea onto my desk. He struck down at the presidential procession in a smooth, clear motion. There was a deafening explosion of thunder, a flash of impossibly white light, a scattering of dust and particles and fragments. The holographic displays went dead, and I exhaled deeply, letting out the breath I didn't know I had been holding, and seeing the brown spill that was spreading slowly, steadily across my desk. I didn't even bother to try to wipe any of it. My eyes remained glued to the fuzzy, crackling images being transmitted from Abuya. When the holostreams were reestablished and everything had settled, there were bodies, there was fire, there was blood. No matter how many times I watch it, a part of me still doesn't believe that the man I loved could cause so much destruction, so much death. I suppose now, in hindsight, I should have known. I should have seen the signs. The frequency with which he quoted the late Ken Saro-Wiwa and Fela Kuti, the way he always averted his eyes when I spoke about the results of the procedure and his future, the calm with which he spoke about his mother's death, the state of the economy, the bribes, the torture, the politicians, the pain. So much pain. A lifetime of pain and struggle. I should have known that he was full and running over. I should have loved him enough to see all of him clearly. More was to come. He went on a rampage throughout Abuya, wielding lightning like raw justice at corrupt politicians, judges, soldiers, police, foreign businessmen. Everyone, he believed, had a hand in making the broken system the way it was. He surrendered 2 terror-filled weeks later, a trail of dead in his wake. During the trial, some of the media started calling him Nigeria's first true-life superhero. They dubbed him Shock Absorber. Others said he was no hero, just another tragic monster the system created. In the end, none of it mattered. He was quickly found guilty and sentenced to death. I was given the opportunity to say goodbye, to watch him die, by President Esekwe herself, a woman who wouldn't be where she was without his actions, but who reluctantly acceded to cries for his public execution in order to secure her position. It was the law, she'd said to me on the phone, Section 33 of the Constitution, and she could not be seen to interfere in the trial of a man, a terrorist, who had extrajudicially murdered her predecessors in cold blood. She'd be accused of sponsoring, sympathizing, or spinelessness in matters of upholding the law. Even commuting his sentence to life would make her position untenable, she told me as I begged her over the phone to save his life, tears streaming down my puffy face like bitter rain. And so, I helplessly watched camouflaged soldiers in tactical masks march in, take up positions, and take aim. He just smiled and mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Mayakahi, the hand of God. My people believe that Sango, the Orisa of thunder and lightning, is also the Lord of justice, and he only strikes down those who have offended him, those who have committed offenses against the land and its people, and for whom spilled blood demanded justice. I think Akahi's people believe something similar. Seeing him bound there, I still wasn't sure if what he had done was good or even just, divine or otherwise. But things had been so wrong in the country for so long that perhaps this was what was needed to start a change. Or perhaps he has only started us down a dark and dangerous path filled with even more desperation, more violence. I don't know. I could see he was at peace with himself, and for that, I was glad. But I could not bear to watch the bullets pierce his beautiful black electric skin, the skin I'd caressed and touched tenderly the skin I'd helped him turn into a weapon. I closed my eyes and waited, holding my breath until finally I heard the unmistakable sharp cracks of semi-automatic fire. They sounded like judgment, like thunder, like heartbreak. Okay, I think we have time maybe for a couple more. Let's see here. This is a very short one. Lights in the sky. Open your eyes. Be mildly disturbed by the acrid smell of rapidly dissolving flesh all around you and the taut, unfamiliar curtain of starless purple sky above. Do not let the cacophony of scudding projectiles and condensed impact explosions all around send you into a panic. It is just a war. Just another war. Remember why you are here, why you are supine on the gently accurate metacrystal terrain of this alien world, your legs splayed out carelessly like the branches of a felled tree. Remember, your name is Chinonso Kalu, that you are an Ekdromoi commando with the 21st Infantry of the United Earth Federation. Remember that a few seconds ago you were knocked unconscious by the shock wave from a detonating Triton 3 grenade. Become painfully aware of the brutal rhythmic ringing in your ears. Jingle bells, do not panic. Be glad you were not caught inside the condensed pressure and nanobot bursts kill radius. Be even gladder that you can't remember anything, despite the impact of the explosion forcing your brain to bounce against your new steel skull hard enough to knock you out. For how long? You don't know. You can't be sure. Seconds, minutes, it doesn't matter. Adjust your visor and initiate a scan of your vitals. Process the data that your exoskeleton's AI is feeding your brain through the router in your cerebral cortex. Request a visual summary. Try to ignore the brief static burst. Carrying a distorted image of your daughter in a fellow frock and Bantu knots dancing around an old, sparsely decorated Christmas tree with a peeling silver cross atop it that flashes across your visor. Log the most important scan data as it scrolls past your eyes in a flurry. Armor integrity, 43.2%. Blood pressure, 144/91. Core temperature, 39 degrees Celsius. Oxygen tank reserves, 62.6%. Ammunition available, 53.7%. Acknowledge that your ammunition stock is sufficient and you still have 4 of your 6 Triton 3 grenades. Good. You will need the grenades, you will need the ammo, you will need all of it. Now get up, this is war. Start running and dynamically adjust your path as you observe the terrain searching for cover. A smoldering tank? No. Possible undetonated incendiaries. Something akin to a tree? No. Unfamiliar trunk strength. A root crystalline outcrop jutting out of the ground? Good. Extruded rock formations should have similar reliability to the surface material, which is solid here. This is cover. Plaster your back to its smooth, hard surface just in time to evade a bright red plasma missile with vicious intentions. Watch it ride the thin atmosphere until it crashes impotently in the monolithic Hellfire 8 infantry teleport vehicle. Watch the static across your visor transform the Hellfire 8 into a lighthouse, a concrete sanctuary that you're rapidly approaching on an overcrowded boat full of hungry, thin, cold-tired, and desperate dark-skinned people just like you and your daughter. An old man passes you a large bottle of scotch wrapped in a dirty, peeling brown paper bag with the number 25 crudely written on it. He manages a hopeful smile as he reminds you that it is Jesus' birthday today and wishes you a Merry Christmas. You smile back and blink the Hellfire 8 back into reality. Glance over the edge of the outcrop and take in the swath of open glassy ground that lays between you and the main Chironi defense turret that is delivering swift, painful death to the overwhelming majority of the slowly advancing UEF formation behind you. Enable distance estimation on your visor and register the 106.3 meters between your position and the turret. Look left, following the flash of light that grazes the edge of your vision, just in time to see a survivor of the previous UEF advance flop onto his belly at the edge of a bizarrely thick and angular hyaline brush. Scan his details, log vital statistics and supplies. He has 2 programmable plasma grenades confirmed in his weapon. Warm brown eyes that are pleading desperately with you not to leave her alone in this strange place because the passport and the money and even the quality of life mean nothing if she does not have you. And 21% of his ammo load remaining. Sent him a direct message on the secure short-range comms channel. Lance Corporal Kalu of the 21st Ekrodomi requesting cover fire. Lao Chen, 42nd. What's your play, Kalu? He asks. Reduce your plan to a concise set of actions and inform him to his part in them. Tell him that you're going to charge the main defense turret to detonate the Triton 3 and clear troop advance. Require 5.5 meter proximity. Need suppression fire to create an 8-second window. Listen to his response. You things can run that fast? Inform him that you can. Register his contemptuous tone and his choice of descriptor for you. Ignore them. You have no need for Chen's prejudices. You only need his cover fire administered effectively and efficiently. Tell Chen to fully unload his ammo at a concentrated point on your signal. Send him the coordinates. Wonder if you will ever spend another Christmas with your daughter as you wait for the tide of whizzing and banging and booming and screaming to ebb. Watch the explosions decorate the alien terrain like so many shiny Christmas ornaments on a glass tree. Let the heat and the death and the noise all around remind you of the insurgency that forced you to flee your home in Kano, of the insurgency that grew to become a war, of the war that took a wife from you and a mother from your daughter. Christmas only ever comes once a year, but there is always a war somewhere. When the tide subsides, send the support signal to Chen and break out from behind the rock, beelining for the turret position in giant strides powered by your exoskeleton. Watch the faint yellow energy membrane in front of the turret ripple and vibrate violently ahead of you as Chen's fire pounds into the repulsion fire relentlessly, blinding it to your advance. Accelerate. Tense. Veer off path as much as you can without losing speed to evade the Mystine plasma missile hurtling its way towards you. Watch it arc and seize before exploding mid-air just behind you with a spectacular sound like a star screaming to announce the birth of a king. Ding-dong merrily on high. Brace. Take the impact on the contracted interlocking plates that line your exoskeletons back. Stagger forward, stumble, do not fall, do not fucking fall. Regain your balance, correct your path, keep running. Ignore the fact that you can hear nothing now but a high winding whine. Hark the herald angels sing. Realize that you are almost at the turret and there is no more suppression fire, so Chen is either dead or out of ammo. Realize that it is now or never. You have to enlist to secure her future. The UEF will make her a citizen and take care of her, protect her in all the ways you will never be able to, and they will give her a life she deserves. Where bright lights in the sky do not always mean death is coming. Make your move. Let the AI calculate the nearest angle and point of approach to minimize probability of impact damage. Display the results on your visor. Hug her and tell her it is the only way. Lie to her that you will be back before next Christmas because it is just a war. Only another war. And align your steps with the harsh red dashes of the AI's calculated path. Raise your weapon. Step into range. Launch the grenade on a low trajectory, allowing it transit the open pellucid ground and arrive with just enough energy to attach itself onto the base of the turret and shimmer once. Bank left, hard. Dive onto the ground, pressing your body to the alien world and hugging it desperately like you are gravity made flesh as the turret enfolds in a bubble of broken pressure. Vicious nanobots consuming everything caught within. Hear her voice cry out for her daddy, daddy, please. In the deafening roar of the explosion that turns the turret into a bright, shimmering Christmas tree of death against the alien sky. Feel it lift you up, throw you several feet in the air like you are nothing but the doll you gave your daughter 14 Christmases ago, crash to the ground rudely and succumb to the darkness that once more caresses your consciousness. Welcome the silence, welcome the darkness, welcome the silent night of you. Open your eyes. Be disturbed by the acrid smell of rapidly dissolving flesh and metal around you and the crystalline terrain of the alien world beneath you. Catch your reflection in it. Wonder briefly why the image you see has a steel mask for a face and two bright neon red orbs for eyes. Remember suddenly why you are here. Remember that it has been 14 Christmases since they bonded your mind and body to this suit, to this war machine. Remember that it has been 14 Earth years since you tasted good scotch, ate hot jollof rice, kissed your daughter's forehead. Remember the sacrifice of the flesh, taken the cacophony of scudding projectiles and condensed impact explosions all around you. Through it all, remember her. Now get up. This is war. Slides in the Sky. Wole Talabi. And we have time for one more. And this one is called Silence. Another very short one. Silence is how you respond when she tells you her lilting voice that always reminds you of the seaside at dawn, now trembling with pain, that her boyfriend is cheating on her. Silence. Because the truth in that moment is too ugly to put on display, and because it's not a complete truth. Yes, some part of you is glad that it is over, that you now have a chance to finally make her see just how much you want to be with her. And yet, for now, you are just friends, liars and friends, denying the spark that has existed between you since you first met, since your first kiss, since you first looked into each other's eyes and got hopelessly lost 2 years ago and 2 continents away. Eventually, you remember how much she said she really liked him and how badly she must be hurting in this moment. And because you love her, you finally gather enough sheaves of empathy to say, "I'm so sorry, B," and mean it. She's racked by another wave of sobs, and you respond with another awkward silence. That is what follows after you tell her you love her 7 months later and ask her the question. You are both sitting on comfortable chairs in the brown wood and gunmetal embrace of the Oriental Hotel lounge with gin and tonics in your hands. It's a few days to Christmas, and enthusiastic red and green and yellow lights are blinking all around you, like fireflies filtered through a rainbow. Your heart is beating wildly in your chest, and the edges of your vision are becoming blurry. She's staring at your face intently, perhaps looking for some visual confirmation of what you just said, or perhaps just because she cannot bear not to look at you in this moment. This moment, you have chosen to cross a bridge you both knew existed but did not dare set foot upon for reasons neither of you can or ever will be able to accurately articulate. But now, in the seemingly infinite moment, everything is changing, initiated as was all creation by 4 simple words. Do you love me? But all you have created is tension. Something slithers slowly down your spine, sending a shiver surging through you. You wonder if she notices, The silence is starting to burn your ears. You want to say something to fill it up. Follow up your declaration of love with the perfect words of convince her of its validity, but you can barely breathe. It feels like you have been inflated with too much emotion. Then, just when you cannot endure it anymore, she opens her mouth and finally breaks that horrible, excruciating silence. There have been 4 months of it for your sanity's sake. Not because she said no, that would have been easy to deal with in comparison, but because she said, I don't know, which was probably the truth of what she felt in that moment. But as anyone who has ever lied to someone, they love before knows sometimes the truth hurts more than any lie ever could. So you'd ask for an explanation and you gotten one, but it didn't make sense to you because you loved her and you were sure she loved you, and so nothing else but your dream of love could have possibly made sense. Somewhere in the slurry of teary words, she said she needed time. So you gave her that. So you gave her 3 weeks to make up her mind, 3 weeks of hardly eating and barely breathing and constantly waiting for her to say yes. But when the time came and she still said she didn't know, that she was dealing with her own personal issues and needed time to work her way through, you did what you thought you had to do. You let your love ignite itself and turn into a bright, burning anger. And because you couldn't stand to see her with your soul still on fire, you cut her off for your sanity's sake. You built sturdy walls out of deleted phone numbers. You blocked social media accounts, shed tears, ignored emails, neglected text messages, drank copious amounts of alcohol, and avoided mutual friends. But it is the nature of walls to eventually fall, and your wall has all come crumbling down now that she's standing in front of you, her hair wet and matted to her skin from the rain, her chest heaving rhythmically, her makeup running along the edges of her face in localized ochre rivulets. Shocked, you say, Hi. And she says, I've missed you. And then you take her in your arms and press her to your skin desperately, wondering how you ever shut her out and let her go, went all these months without talking to her, hearing her laugh, seeing her smile feverishly. You tell her you've missed her too, and then she pulls you close and kisses you deeply, and when she pulls away, all your walls are rubble around your feet, and then there is an extended silence. It has become comfortable. She lays in your arms, her head snug in the crook between your neck and your shoulder, silent and comfortable. This is how you now spent most of your time together, holding each other in silence. The explanations have been made. She needed time to be sure it wasn't a rebound, that she wouldn't use you to work through a recently failed relationship. You couldn't bear to be around her or hear her name without having her to hold and cherish and love in all the ways one human being could love another. The mechanics of the separation were unfortunate but necessary. She is now sure. You are now whole. All is well. You adjust your arm and realize with an overwhelming, ineffable certainty that in that moment, under the fluorescent glow of the solitary light bulb in her apartment and a million more moments like it, you are both home, with nothing to say and everything to be. Wole Talabi's story Silence from Convergence Problems. And okay, let's sneak in another real short one. Let me see. I'm looking what is available. Let's see here. And as I'm doing this, folks hopefully know that we do this every week. Every Wednesday at midnight SLT. And you're welcome to send ideas, suggestions for stories, and authors. More info is on the newsletter, Draxtor.substack.com. This is a story called The Million Eyes of a Lonely and Fragile God. I never told her I loved her. Yes, I asked her to be my girlfriend, and yes, I asked her if she would marry me, and to both questions she answered yes, but that was before I looked at myself with the eyes of the universe and saw nothing but emptiness. I never told her I loved her, and honestly, I don't know why. That's probably why things turned out the way they did in the end. Don't let go! Rotimi, can you hear me? Don't let go! I can hear Tinuka screaming into the comm system as the shuttle silently disintegrates around me. A cluster of debris is beside me and what is left of the Orisha 1, or maybe it is above me or below, I don't know. Directions are arbitrary in space, and I've lost my frame of reference. All I know is that the pieces of shattered steel and fiberglass are approaching me and approaching the chunk of the Orisha 1 I'm fighting to hold on to. Meanwhile, the chunk is still accelerating, falling towards Europa faster than it can spin away and creating artificial gravity I need to fight against. Hold on, don't let go! She keeps screaming, crying, but we both know there is no point. I'm being torn apart in the blackness of an impossibly big universe, holding on to a damaged spacecraft, and almost crying because I already know I will die out here alone in the cold and the dark. I knew I did not love Tinuka 3 months after we started dating, but we were comfortable enough with each other not to need much else. We worked together, had similar interests, enjoyed each other's company, but didn't love her. And I never lied. I never said that I did. I don't know why I didn't just tell her how I felt. Maybe I'm a coward. Maybe I was afraid of hurting her with the truth. Every time I worked up the nerve to tell her how I felt, I would look into the infinite glistening blackness of her eyes and in them see something pleading with me not to let go of us. So I did not let go. I hit the comms button on my suit to open the channel. I exhale and then I speak. Mission failure. I repeat, mission failure. The Orisha 1 cannot dock with Europa Exploration Station. Severe impact damage. I'm barely holding on here. Can someone tell me what happened? It will take a few minutes for the electromagnetic waves my voice is riding to reach them. I close my eyes to shut out the blackness and the debris and the stars and the possibility of tears. We don't know, but Tinuka starts, but Eleki, the main dispatcher in Abuya, interrupts her, trying to maintain some semblance of control. Oga, Europa Exploration Station AI is reporting a damaged starboard solar rotary joint. The main truss assembly broke off. We think that's what hit you on approach. We're still checking. There's the necessary silence. Then I say, it doesn't matter. Orisha 1 is completely gone. There's a cluster of debris moving faster than I am. It'll hit me soon, in a few hours or so. I wait. Don't say that, Tinuka pleads. A few minutes later, try to pull yourself to something. Anything you can use as a shield to protect yourself. I haven't heard her voice this shrill and pained since I first told her I had volunteered for the African Union's Europa exploration mission. Drifting, Europa comes into my view. Such a beautiful, still thing from far away. It's very blue and very brown, and it's wrapped in this wispy corona, like God used an Instagram filter before he posted it up in the universe. And that's so funny. I start to laugh, and then I start to cry because I know I'm going to die here. Sure, I'll try. There's a sluggish chaos and terrifying silence all around me. The fragments of the shuttle that cradled me and carried me here so far from home are coming toward me slowly, like apex predators. I pull on the tangled wires tethering me to the bulk of twisted metal and carbon fiber, but it is accelerating away from me. I'm fighting a cosmological force and I'm losing. It feels like I'm fighting against the very essence of things. I think I lost before the fight even began. I tried to make myself love Tinuke. I took her out to her favorite places in Abuya, spent as much time as I could with her when we visited the proposed launch site in Yola long before I knew I'd volunteer for the mission. We even spent the Christmas before we got married in her parents' house. I made love to Tinuka desperately as if the act could emotionally arc a spark between us. I pulled and dragged and willed myself closer to her, but it was not enough. There was always an emotional space between us I could not overcome that left me feeling hollow and empty. All I did was replace the emotional space with a physical one. I care for you more than anything in the world, I told her 2 weeks before the launch. We were in bed. I was stroking her hair and she was crying. You're the best thing that has ever happened to me. It was the closest I ever came to telling her I loved her. I couldn't hold on. I couldn't let go. I should have let go. I let go. The wires and cables slipped from my grip slowly. The difference between my acceleration and the bulk of Oshira One's makeshift makes me drift away in slow motion. Rotimi, what happened? Tinuka's words come after the long, lovely silence throttled into a whine. I'm sorry, Tinuka, for everything. I pause as she starts to sob, and then I add, I love you very much. I owe her that much. She deserves that much. I hit the comms button on my suit to shut out transmissions. Silence wraps itself around me like a blanket. I spin and drift lazily. Something hits me. Everything goes blurry for a few seconds or minutes or hours or even days, I can't tell. When I manage to open my eyes again, there are stars. So many stars. Ineffable spheres of faraway light. Little jewels set into a tapestry of darkness. Coral beads embroidered into expensive black aso-oke. The million eyes of a lonely and fragile god. They shine and glint and gleam in every corner of my vision. And I see myself in every one of them. The tears fall. I'm alone. But I'm no longer afraid. I matter to someone. In the darkness and the cold, I finally let go of myself and cling to that knowledge. Desperately. All right, today, reading from Wole Talabi's Convergence Problems. Thank you for joining, and read you next week. Good night. We're all thrown into it, one way or the other. We all try to steer it as straight as we can. Sometimes we collide with each other. Who is to blame? And who's gonna fix the boat? Life, oh life, there's nothing to fear from your life. Let me know if I can be of any help. Life, you and I, let's try a fresh start today. What do you say? Let's close the door on the past. So we swim, and it is in so many ways just a little trick to keep our heads above water. But now I'm not afraid anymore.